Look at the photograph. There are 9 people in it, arranged the way families were arranged for the camera 100 years ago, stiff and formal, holding still for the long exposure. At the back stand the tall ones. A boy of 16 named Arthur, big for his age, bigger than his own father. A girl of 17 named Marie, looking directly into the lens with a steadiness that will unsettle you once you know what you are looking at. Between and around them, the parents. The father, 43 years old, gazing off to the side with the faintest curl of a smile on his mouth, as though he is thinking about something the camera cannot see. The mother, 37, looking away from the lens and cradled in her arms. A baby, 4 months old. A daughter named Mary Lou, and seated in a row in front, 4 small children in brand new clothes. James, who is 4, Maybelle, who is 7, Raymond, who is 2, Carrie, who is 12. New shoes on their feet, new collars at their throats. Every one of them dressed better than a tobacco farmer's children in rural North Carolina had any business being dressed, and every one of them staring at the camera without a single smile among them. This is the Lawson family of Germantown, Stokes County, North Carolina. The picture was taken in a photography studio in Winston-Salem in the middle of December, in the year 1929. 10 days after this photograph was taken, 7 of the 9 people in it would be dead by the hand of the man standing among them. He would make the 8th himself, alone, in the woods, with the same gun. Only one of these 9 faces would live to see another Christmas. And here is the thing that has haunted people for 100 years. The thing that has sent this image spreading across the internet, in our own time as the cursed photograph, the scariest picture ever taken. He knew. When this shutter opened and closed, when this family held still and somber and unsmiling for the camera, the father already knew what he was going to do. He had planned it. He had paid for it. This portrait was not a memory. It was a rehearsal for a funeral. He was dressing his family for the grave, and only he knew it. This is the story of Charlie Lawson, and the Christmas he decided none of them would survive. To understand what happened, you have to first understand what kind of man Charles Davis Lawson was, because nothing about him, from the outside, made any sense of it. Nothing. Quickly, before we continue, please tell me in the comments where in the world you are watching from today. Also, I'm very happy to let you know that we are now on Spotify. Click the link in the description or on the channel profile to enjoy our stories on Spotify. And if you fancy a book on dark, unfiltered history, I have something for you in the comments. Charles Davis Lawson was, by every account that survives, an ordinary man. He was born in 1886 into a sharecropping family, which in the rural American South of that era meant a life close to the bone. Sharecroppers did not own the land they worked. They farmed another man's ground for a share of the crop, and that share was rarely enough, and the arrangement kept generation after generation locked in a kind of gentle, grinding poverty that was very hard to climb out of. Charlie Lawson had grown up inside that. He knew what it was to have nothing, and he had climbed out. That is the part people forget. By the time of our story, Charlie Lawson was not a sharecropper. He had worked and saved and scraped, and he had managed to buy his own farm, a piece of ground near his brother's land, with a 200-year-old farmhouse on it that had seen better days but was, crucially, his. He grew tobacco, the cash crop of that country, the leaf that built and broke so many families across the Carolinas. He was a landowner now, a man of modest standing, a man who had done, by the measure of his own hard beginnings, well. He married a woman named Fanny, and it is Fanny, more than anyone else in this story, that I want you to hold on to, because when you have heard everything, when you know every terrible thing that happened in that house, the figure who stays with you is not the killer, it is her. Fanny Lawson was, by every description, a devoted mother. She had married Charlie and given him children, and she raised those children in the way of mountain and farm women of that time, which is to say with her hands, constantly, from before dawn until after dark. There was no rest in a life like Fanny's. There were 7 children to feed and clothe and clean and teach and hold. There were meals to cook over a wood stove, clothes to wash by hand, a garden to tend, a house to keep, and a nursing infant on her hip through all of it. And she did it. Right to the end, she did it. That is the detail that has struck so many people who have sat with this story over the years. the relentlessness of her care, the way a mother's work simply does not stop, even when, though she could not have known it, she had only days left to give it. The children came one after another over the years. The oldest was Marie, who by 1929 was 17, nearly a woman, the kind of eldest daughter who becomes a second mother in a big farm family, helping to raise the ones beneath her. Then Arthur, 16, the eldest son, already grown large and strong, doing a man's work in the fields alongside his father. Then a gap, and Carrie, who was 12. Then Mabel, 7. Then James, 4. Then Raymond, 2. And finally, the baby, born just that autumn, only 4 months old at Christmas. Mary Lou. 7 children, 2 parents, 9 people, in a farmhouse on a hill in Stokes County, living the ordinary, difficult, unremarkable life of a farming family in the last weeks before the Great Depression fully closed its fist on the country. There was nothing wrong with them. That is what everyone said, afterward, over and over, in a kind of stunned disbelief. Neighbors described a normal family. The children were said to be well cared for, healthy, clean, loved. Charlie was known as a hard worker, a churchgoer, a quiet man. He was not a drinker. He was not known for cruelty. He did not beat his wife in the street or terrorize the town. If you had walked past the Lawson farm in the autumn of 1929, you would have seen a father and his sons in the tobacco rows, a mother at the wash line with a baby on her hip, children running in the yard, and you would have thought, there is a family getting by. There is a family that has made it. And that is exactly why this case has never let go of the American imagination. Because there was no warning anyone could see, no slow descent that neighbors watched with dread, no violent history, no known madness, no long feud building toward blood. Just an ordinary tobacco farmer, an ordinary devoted wife, 7 ordinary children, and then, out of a clear December sky, the unthinkable. Except that it was not quite out of a clear sky, because in the last weeks before Christmas, Charlie Lawson began to behave strangely, and the strangest thing he did was the photograph. In the middle of December, about 10 days before Christmas, Charlie Lawson announced that he was taking the whole family into town. For a family like the Lawsons, this was already unusual. Winston-Salem was a real journey from the farm, and trips into the city were rare and purposeful, not casual outings. But what Charlie did once they got there was stranger still. He took his wife and all 7 children, and he bought them new clothes, not mended clothes, not hand-me-downs, passed from the older children down to the younger, the way a poor farm family always managed it. Store-bought clothes, new, for everyone. His wife, his 4 daughters, his 3 sons, each of them outfitted in something fresh and formal and expensive. You have to sit with what that meant to a man like Charlie Lawson. This was a man who had come up out of sharecropping poverty, who knew the exact weight of a dollar, who had saved for years to buy his own ground. Money was not something Charlie Lawson spent freely. It was something he counted, and here he was, in a Winston-Salem store, laying out sums on new clothing for 9 people, an extravagance that would have made no sense at all to anyone who knew him. Some of the family may have wondered at it. Perhaps they simply thought Charlie had done well that year, that the tobacco had brought a good price, that he wanted to treat them for once. Perhaps the children were simply delighted. New clothes, for Christmas, all of them at once. What child would question that? But Charlie was not finished. Having dressed them all, he took them to a photography studio. Understand how unusual this was. A professional studio portrait, in 1929, was not a small thing. It was not the casual snapshot of our own age, where every one of us carries 1,000 pictures in a pocket. A studio sitting cost real money. It was the sort of thing a working family might do once, perhaps, for a wedding, or not at all in a lifetime. For a tobacco farmer to march his entire family into a Winston-Salem studio and pay to have them all photographed together, in their brand new clothes, was so far outside the ordinary that it demanded an explanation, and Charlie offered none. He simply had it done, so they posed. Look at the photograph again, now that you know them. The parents at the back, the father with that faint, strange smile, gazing off to the side, the mother beside him, looking away, holding the baby Mary Lou against her, the 2 eldest, Arthur and Marie, standing tall, Marie's eyes fixed dead into the lens, and the four little ones seated in front, scrubbed and combed and dressed in their new things, James and Maybelle, and Raymond and Carrie, none of them smiling, all of them still. It is a somber picture, rigid, joyless. People have looked at it for 100 years and tried to read something into every face, some premonition, some flicker of knowing. Most of that is the mind playing tricks, the way we always read doom backward into the last images of the doomed. The children did not know. Fanny did not know. Marie, staring so steadily into the camera, did not know. They were simply holding still for a long exposure the way people did, tired perhaps, unused to the ceremony of it, thinking of the walk home and the chores waiting. Only one person in that room knew what the photograph was for, and that was the man with the faint smile, looking off to the side at something none of the rest of them could see, because Charlie Lawson had bought those clothes and paid for that portrait for a reason. The family would be buried in those very clothes, and the photograph would be the last complete image of them, the record that they had once all been alive together, on the same day, in the same room. He was not making a memory for them. He was making one of them, for everyone else, for the world that would come afterward to stare. 10 days, that is all that stood between the click of that shutter and Christmas morning. Christmas Day, the 25th of December, 1929, began like an ordinary Christmas on the Lawson farm. Marie, the eldest daughter, rose early to bake. She was making a Christmas cake, 2 layers in separate pans, which she iced and set aside for the family's celebration later in the day. Picture that, a 17-year-old girl, up before the others in the cold farmhouse kitchen, baking a cake for Christmas, the ordinary sweet labor of the holiday, with no idea that she was preparing for a feast she would not live to eat. The morning had a plan to it, though only one person knew the whole of it. Charlie and his eldest son Arthur had been out that morning, and there was talk of rabbit hunting in the afternoon, a Christmas tradition in that country. Boys and men went out after rabbits on Christmas Day. It was expected. It was ordinary, and so it raised no alarm at all when Charlie sent Arthur off to town to buy more shotgun shells. They would need shells for the hunt. "Go on into town, son, and fetch some." Arthur went. We do not know for certain what was in Charlie's mind when he sent his eldest son away, but there is a chilling logic that many have pointed to over the years, and it is this. Arthur was 16, and Arthur was big. Look at the photograph. The boy is bigger than his father. If Charlie Lawson intended to do what he did that day, then Arthur was the one person in that house strong enough to stop him. Arthur was the danger to the plan. And so Arthur, alone of all of them, was sent away, down the road to town, on an errand for shotgun shells, while behind him, the plan began to move. The first to die were the 2 middle girls. Carrie, who was 12, and Maybelle, who was 7, left the house that morning to walk to the home of their aunt and uncle, a short journey along a path near the farm. It was Christmas. They were going visiting, the way children do. 2 little girls in their new clothes, walking a country path on Christmas morning. Sisters 5 years apart, the older one no doubt minding the younger. Their father was waiting for them. He had positioned himself near the tobacco barn, along the path they would take, and he had the shotgun. What happened there happened quickly, and I am not going to dwell on the mechanics of it, because these were 2 small girls, and they deserve better from us than to have their last moments turned into spectacle. It is enough, and it is more than enough, to say that Charlie Lawson killed both of his daughters there by the barn, Carrie and Maybelle, and that neither of them can have understood what was happening to them or why, and that the last face either of them saw was their father's. And then he did something that tells you this was not a man in a blind, thoughtless rage. He carried their bodies into the tobacco barn. A tobacco barn is a tall, dark structure, built for hanging and drying the leaf, full of racks and rafters and shadow. He laid his daughters inside it, and he arranged them. He placed their bodies carefully, and he put stones beneath their heads, like pillows, as though he were laying them down to sleep. Think about what that arranging means. It means he stopped. It means that in the middle of killing his own children, he took the time and the care to lay them out with a kind of terrible tenderness, to prop their heads, to compose them. This was not frenzy. This was ritual. Whatever was moving in Charlie Lawson that morning, it was not simply the loss of control. It was something colder and more deliberate, something that killed and then gently arranged the dead, and then turned and walked back up toward the house, where the rest of his family was still alive, still going about their Christmas morning, with no idea that two of them were already lying in the dark of the tobacco barn with stones beneath their heads. Back at the house, Fanny was on the porch. We can reconstruct much of what followed from the coroner's inquest that was held in the days after, from the positions of the bodies, from the testimony of the neighbors and relatives who came to that house and saw what was there. It is from these sober official records, the paperwork of a rural county trying to make sense of the unspeakable, that we know the order of what happened next. Charlie came back from the barn, and he shot his wife on the porch of their home. Fanny, the mother of his 7 children, the woman who had spent nearly 2 decades in relentless, unending care of that family, who had a nursing infant still in the house. She died there, on the porch of the home they had worked so hard to own. Then he went inside. Marie was there, the eldest daughter, 17, who had risen early to bake the Christmas cake, whose 2 iced layers were sitting in that very kitchen. Her father found her, and he killed her too. And then the small ones, the 2 little boys, James, who was 4, and Raymond, who was 2, had understood enough of what was happening to be afraid. Children know. However young, they know when something is terribly wrong, and these 2 had tried to hide. Somewhere in that farmhouse, a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old had found a place to press themselves small and quiet, the way children hide, hoping the danger would pass them by. It did not. Their father found them, and he killed them where they hid, and last of all, the baby. Mary Lou, 4 months old, the infant who had been cradled in Fanny's arms in the photograph. Charlie killed her too. That is the whole of it. In the space of a single Christmas morning, Charlie Lawson had killed his wife and 6 of his 7 children. Fanny on the porch, Marie in the kitchen, Carrie and Maybelle in the tobacco barn, James and Raymond in their hiding place, and the baby, last, 7 people. And the 7 of them, every one, he arranged. This is the detail that lifts the Lawson murders out of the ordinary catalog of family violence and into something that has haunted people for a century. He did not simply kill them and flee. He laid them out. Each body was composed, the arms crossed over the chest in the old funereal pose, the way the dead were laid out for burial in that time and place. And beneath each head, he placed something soft, or in the barn, stones, to lift it as a pillow lifts a sleeper's head. He went through that house and that barn, from the porch to the kitchen to the hiding places, and one by one, he arranged his murdered family as if he were preparing them to be viewed, as if he were, in some broken and unreachable part of himself, still their father, still tending them, still performing that last act of care over the bodies of the people he had just destroyed. The neighbors, meanwhile, had heard the gunshots, and they had thought nothing of it, because it was Christmas Day, and on Christmas Day the men went rabbit hunting, and gunshots ringing out across the winter fields were the ordinary sound of the holiday. The very tradition that Charlie had used as his cover, the hunt, the reason he had sent Arthur for shells, was also the reason that no one came running. The whole countryside heard the Lawson family die and mistook it for the sound of Christmas. Arthur Lawson came home from town that afternoon with the shotgun shells his father had sent him to buy. We can only imagine what it was to be him, 16 years old, walking back up the road to the family farm on Christmas Day, carrying the shells for an afternoon hunt with his father, and finding, instead, that his entire world had ended while he was gone. His mother, his brothers, his sisters, the baby, all of them, and his father, nowhere to be found. It was Arthur, it is believed, who raised the alarm, and relatives had been arriving too, coming to wish the Lawsons a Merry Christmas, walking into that farmhouse expecting warmth and a holiday table, and finding instead the arranged and murdered dead, and, sitting untouched in the kitchen, Marie's freshly baked Christmas cake, iced and waiting, as though the girl who made it might come back at any moment to serve it. The alarm went up. Word spread across the county with the terrible speed that such news always travels. Neighbors and lawmen gathered at the farm, and one question hung over all of it. Where was Charlie? He was in the woods. A manhunt of sorts formed, though it did not last long. Within hours, from the trees not far from the house, the gathered crowd heard a single gunshot. They went toward it, And there, in the woods he had known his whole life, they found Charlie Lawson dead by his own hand, with the same shotgun, having done to himself what he had done to his family. And around the base of a nearby tree, they found something that has stayed with investigators and storytellers ever since. Footprints. A great many footprints, circling the tree, pressed into the ground. Charlie Lawson had stood in that spot for a long time before the end. He had paced, around and around that tree, back and forth, for who knows how long, wearing a path in the earth, before he finally raised the gun to himself. Whatever was in him, whatever had driven him to the barn and the porch and the kitchen that morning, it had not left him at peace afterward. He had walked in circles in the cold woods, alone, for what must have been a very long time, before he could bring himself to finish it. There were letters, it was said, found with his body or in the house, notes he had written, but they offered no clean answer, nothing that explained, nothing that made the pieces fit. And so the county, and then the state, and then the whole horrified nation reading about it in the newspapers, was left with the same impossible question that we are left with now, 100 years later. Why? There was, in the end, one physical finding, one thing the doctors could point to. An autopsy was performed on Charlie Lawson's body, and when the physicians examined his brain, they found something. A tumor, a growth inside the skull of the man who had murdered his family. And for many people, then and now, that has been the answer they reached for, because it is the answer that lets us breathe again. A brain tumor, a physical thing, a lump of aberrant tissue pressing on the delicate machinery of the mind, capable, we know, of altering personality, of producing rage, of unmooring a man from himself in ways he cannot control or even perceive. If Charlie Lawson had a tumor in his brain, then Charlie Lawson was, in a sense, not himself. The disease did it. The man we might have known, the hard-working church-going father, was overtaken by something growing in his skull, and it was that, and not him, that walked to the tobacco barn on Christmas morning. It is a comforting explanation. It may even be the true one. We genuinely do not know whether that tumor was the cause of what he did, or merely a thing that happened to be present in the head of a man who did a monstrous thing for reasons of his own. Medicine in 1929 could identify a tumor, but it could not prove what a tumor had or had not done to a man's soul. The brain tumor is a fact. What the brain tumor means is a theory, and it is not the only theory, because 60 years later, another explanation emerged, one far darker and far more human than any growth in the brain, and I include it not to sensationalize but because no honest account of this case can leave it out. The following passage can be trimmed for AdSense sensitivity without breaking the surrounding flow. In 1990, a cousin of the Lawson children, named Stella Lawson Bowles, spoke publicly about something the family had kept quiet for 60 years. She had, she said, overheard the women of the family talking, long ago, about a discovery Fanny had made in the weeks before that Christmas. According to this account, Fanny had learned that her husband had been abusing their eldest daughter, Marie, the 17-year-old, and that Marie was pregnant. The suggestion was that Marie had confided in a friend, that the terrible secret was beginning to move beyond the walls of the house, and that Charlie, facing the exposure and ruin of everything he was, made the decision that no exposure could reach a family that no longer existed. This account appears in Trudy Smith's 1990 book on the case, White Christmas, Bloody Christmas, which drew on interviews with people who had known the family. It is not proven. There was no definitive medical documentation of a pregnancy recorded in the immediate aftermath, and much of it rests on memory and family rumor surfacing decades later. But it has become, for many, the most persuasive shadow behind the photograph, the scandalous secret that would explain the sudden extravagance, the somber, unsmiling faces, the fact that Charlie chose to erase them all, rather than let the truth of what he had done come to light. So we are left with two explanations, and they do not cancel each other out. The tumor, pressing physically on the mind. The secret, pressing on the whole edifice of Charlie Lawson's life and reputation and self. Perhaps it was one, perhaps it was the other, perhaps it was both together. A diseased brain and a desperate motive braided into a single unbearable act. Or perhaps, and this is the possibility that unsettles most of all, there is no explanation that will ever truly account for a father walking his own small daughters to a tobacco barn on Christmas morning. Some doors, when they close, do not open again. Charlie took the whole of the answer into the woods with him and paced his circle around that tree and kept it. The aftermath was its own strange and terrible chapter. The Lawson farmhouse did not fade quietly into memory. It became, almost immediately, a destination. In the weeks and months after the murders, thousands of people came to Germantown to see the house where the family had died. They walked through the rooms, they stared, and in one of the most disturbing details in all of American true crime, Marie's Christmas cake, the 2 iced layers she had baked that morning and never lived to serve, was left sitting in the house, and it became a kind of relic. Visitors came to look at the dead girl's cake. Some of them, it is said, picked the raisins out of it to keep as souvenirs. The human capacity to turn horror into spectacle, to reach out and take a piece of someone else's tragedy home in a pocket, has rarely shown itself so nakedly. The murders became a story that the whole country told. In 1930, a musical group called the Carolina Buddies recorded a ballad about it, the story of the murder of the Lawson family, and that song carried the tale across the South and beyond, the way murder ballads had carried such stories for centuries, set to a mournful tune, sung in parlors and on porches, keeping the names of the dead alive in the oldest way people know. The newspapers, the Winston-Salem Journal, and the Danbury Reporter and others had covered every development, from the first horrified reports on the 26th of December through the inquest and into the following year. The coroner's records, the archives, the ballad, the book. This family is documented. Unlike so many stories that dissolve into legend, the Lawsons are real and provable and preserved. Every name I have spoken to you is a name in the record. Every one of them lived, and every one of them died, exactly as I have told you. And Arthur, the boy who was sent for shotgun shells, the one who lived, his survival was a mercy so thin it hardly deserves the word. He walked home into the ruin of his entire family, 16 years old, and he had to go on. He had to be the one who remembered them. He grew up, and he married, and he had children of his own, 4 of them. A new family built on the far side of a horror most of us cannot imagine carrying. But the story does not grant him a long life either. In 1945, Arthur Lawson was killed in a car accident, 16 years after the Christmas that took everyone else, leaving behind his wife and his 4 children. The one who survived did not survive by much. The whole family, in the end, was gathered back into an early grave. They were buried, all of them, in the new clothes Charlie had bought them for the photograph. That was what the clothes were always for. He dressed his family for the camera, and then he dressed them for the ground, and it was the same clothes, and he knew it, standing in that studio with the faint smile on his face, gazing off at the thing none of them could see. So look at the photograph one last time. You know them now. You know their names and their ages and how each of them died. Arthur, 16, standing tall at the back, the only one of these 9 faces who would grow older, who would carry the rest of them in his memory for 16 more years before the road took him too. Marie, 17, staring so steadily into the lens, who would rise on Christmas morning to bake a cake she would never taste. Carrie, 12, and Maybelle, 7, the 2 little sisters who would walk a country path together one last time. James, 4, and Raymond, 2, who would hide from their own father and be found. Charlie, 43, with his strange half-smile, the man who arranged it all. And Fanny, 37 years old, looking away from the camera, holding her 4-month-old daughter Mary Lou against her, the way she had held all of them, the way mothers do, the way she would go on doing right to the very end. When you have taken in the whole of this horror, when you have followed Charlie to the barn and the porch and the woods, it is not his face you find yourself returning to, it is hers. The relentless, ordinary, unstoppable care of a mother, frozen in a photograph, cradling the youngest of the 7 children she would not be able to save, on a day 10 days before the end, when she still believed, as she had every right to believe, that they had made it, that the worst was behind them, that her family was safe. The photograph is real. You can find it. It has been preserved, held in the North Carolina State Archives among the records of the case, and 100 years on, as the anniversary of that Christmas approaches, it continues to surface and spread, staring out of screens at people who were not born for generations after everyone in it was dead. It has been called the scariest picture ever taken. But that is not quite right. It is not scary. It is unbearable. Because there is nothing supernatural in it. No ghost, no omen, nothing but 9 ordinary people in their good clothes holding still for a camera. The horror is not in the photograph. The horror is in the 10 days that came after it, and in the single face among the 9 who already knew. They were dressed for a portrait. He was dressing them for the grave, and the only person in all the world who could have warned them was the one holding the whole family still, smiling faintly, looking away. That's it for today's story. Don't forget to check the comments for the book on dark uncensored history.